And this evening, I will just provide you guys with a brief synopsis of what the past couple years has looked like with our moderate income purchase assistance program, and some of the ideas and the challenges and hurdles and opportunities that we think are going to help us get through the remaining couple months. So I am going to share my screen. Sorry, so let's see. Can you guys see my screen yet?
No, we can't.
Okay. So how about now? What do you see?
Nothing.
Nothing. Okay. Let's try this again. And what do you see now?
Nothing on the screen.
Nothing? Okay. So I'm not entirely sure.
Do you want to send it to me, Akira,
Yeah.
and I can share my screen, or just send me the link? Okay.
That would be perfect. Let me go ahead and do that.
Technology is failing us tonight.
I tell you what. Let's see.
And actually, while Akira is sending me the link to that, I just do want to add a little bit more context to why we're having this conversation tonight. And, the reason is and I meant to say this before, but just everything that was happening, my brain got a little frazzled. But anyway, the reason why I invited Akira to come to SITSAC tonight is because as many of you know, the Moderate Income Purchase Assistance Program is funded through the Community Development Block Grant Program. It's not a competitive program, so they don't necessarily come in through our notice of funding availability. But since it is federally funded, and the oversight and sort of evaluation of the performance of the program falls under the purview of this committee and this team, we like to invite Akira and other programs that sort of fit the same mold to come in at the beginning of the year after the review process is completed, and we've gone through a sort of reviewing all the applications, to talk with some of these non-competitive programs to really understand how they're performing, what they're doing, and what they're sort of seeing in the next few months. So I just wanted to add that context to make sure people understood what the purpose of this conversation was. All right. And I'm going to open up this link really quickly.
I just sent that over. Thank you for providing a little bit of background on that.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. Caitlin, are you able to open it?
Yeah, it's just taking a minute to open. It's working.
Yeah, no, thank you. So just as she is pulling that up, I can just get started on our Moderate Income Purchase Assistance Program. Some of you may be familiar with this program already, but our MyPAC program is intended to provide in moderate income households with assistance to purchase in the county. So this program is, as Caitlin stipulated, is funded entirely by CDBG dollars. The program is a deferred second trust loan, and I think we'll pull that up here in a moment. But one of the things that we know is really, really critical, especially among moderate income purchasers, is the fact that a lack of savings, especially in high cost rental markets, is a major hurdle in meeting the requirements for a down payment, in addition to closing costs. So we know that those are significant financial barriers to purchasing. So policies that provide down payment assistance are found to have the greatest potential for increasing home ownership rates. So this is one of those programs in our wheelhouse that allow us to be able to serve moderate income households that want to purchase in the county. Caitlin, I can try again if you're unable to pull it up.
Yeah, we can see it. It's up now.
Oh, you see it?
Yeah, it's
okay.
up now. Yeah.
Because I don't. Okay.
I'm on the second slide. Do you?
Okay. Well,
which slide do you want to be on?
Yeah. Fun times. Let's see. We can. Yeah, if you wouldn't mind just going to slide 3.
Okay. Yep.
Okay. And
Loan
I'll just,
terms.
yeah,
Okay.
perfect. And I can, if you can help me navigate that, that would be helpful. So here's just like the primary stipulations for MyPAP. So again, it's a second trust loan. The loans can be for up to 25% of the purchase price for home in Arlington, not to exceed $112,500, $112,500. And the final sales price cannot exceed more than $500,000. So these loans are a 30-year conventional loans. They carry no interest or monthly payments. And the purchasers must be first-time home buyers. They must also remain in the home as primary resident while the MyPAP loan is outstanding. The MyPAP loan, the terms of the MyPAP loan are released upon repayment. So what that means is that when a homeowner decides to either resell the property or refinance the property, if they have enough equity in the property to repay the MyPAP loan, then there are no restrictions associated with that property after they've repaid the MyPAP loan. Along with the repayment of the MyPAP loan, the county has a shared appreciation model. And so we require 25% of the equity after all of the transfer, recordation, and real estate commissions have been paid. So the county gets that 25%. In addition to the initial loan amount. And what we're seeing typically for sales where the county gets that shared equity is about $7,000 in the shared equity amount. But we typically see repayment at resale as opposed to refinance. So yes, we can go to the next slide, Caitlin. And this is the MyPAP eligibility criteria. Households must earn an income at or below 80% of AMI. So for a household of 1, that's about 79,760 right now. And this is, of course, the HUD published AMI criteria. For a household of 4, that's about 113,840. The other requirements are very, very closely aligned with what a first trust lender would be requiring in terms of the credit score, I think I've already mentioned the maximum loan amount and the maximum sales price. We would be looking at Arlington properties only, a debt to income ratio of 45% or below, and a minimum down payment of 1%. You can go to the next slide. So in FY 18 to FY 22, the county supported 20 borrowers with down payment and closing cost assistance through MyPAP, totaling just over 1.4 million in county funds or CDBG funds. The county dispersed, as you can see here, the lowest number of loans in FY 21, and that's primarily due to COVID. The market conditions during that period of time was really tenuous. Purchasing activity was nearly non-existent for several months among moderate income households. So further to that, there were no MyPAP loans dispersed between March of 2020 and May of 2021. MyPAP borrowers who earn on average $65,000 were also vulnerable to the housing market uncertainties at that time. Um, and many of them that purchased or applied for MyPAP in 2021 communicated a desire to purchase sooner, but there was a reluctance to do so. And several factors were were cited, and that's the fear of the market collapsing, the hope that home prices would reduce even further and they'd be able to afford a larger unit, and then just the overall economic unpredictability. We are projected to close 10 to 12 loans in FY 23 with an average loan amount of about $85,000. You can go to the next slide. So the average MyPAP loan amount between FY 18 and 22 was approximately 73,000. And this is really due to the increasing real estate prices and the fluctuating home buyer trends. There's just a lot of uncertainty there. So in FY 18, the average loan amount was about 55,760. And in FY 20, the average loan amount was 97,187. And again, primarily due to increases in prices as well as interest rates. Next slide. So further to that average or the average MyPAP loan amount in FY 20, we also saw the highest purchase price amounts in FY 20. So as you can see here in FY 20, the average purchase price was $389. In FY 18, the average purchase price was significantly lower than that. It is important to note, though, that in FY 22, the average purchase price includes the sale of 5 affordable dwelling units, which are price and value restricted to remain affordable into perpetuity. And so those units were new units, and typically those units, because they are affordable dwelling units, they are more affordable than the market rate units for the same type of units. They were brand new, and we had several households that were interested in buying those units. You can go to the next slide. So in terms of MyPAP housing type and size, so from FY 18 to 22, condominiums were traditionally more affordable than other housing options, and 85% of MyPAP purchasers purchased a condo in those fiscal years, while single-family homes and duplexes make up about 15% of the home purchases. MyPap borrowers also most commonly purchase two-bedroom units, followed by one-bedroom units. Of the three-bedroom units that were purchased, two of those units were affordable dwelling units. So once again, those affordable dwelling units are really meeting some of the gaps and the needs associated with the moderate income purchaser desires to really have those larger units. We can move to the next slide. So my PAP household size from the same period of time, FY18 to 22, we had about half of the MyPAP borrowers that were made up of households of one. Households of three accounted for 4 of the 20 purchasers, followed by households of two. A well-known hurdle faced by prospective buyers is the affordability of units that accommodate growing families. And I think that's really, all throughout the region. But we are increasingly seeing households of one apply for this program. So just anecdotally, 4 of the 5 applications that I have on my desk are households of one. We see households of one being far more nimble in terms of the unit that they choose. They are more flexible. They tend to not, of course, have as much overhead and debt. And in this time in the market, they are looking to purchase and oftentimes are younger, just coming out of college. So we're certainly seeing a growing trend among the younger households of one wanting to purchase with MyPap. Next slide. So in terms of race, MyPap race and ethnicity for the same time period, 8 or 40% of MyPap borrowers were white, non-Hispanic, while Black and Hispanic households collectively make up about half of those who purchased using the program. And again, to my initial comment about what we're seeing in terms of trends, we are seeing single white households looking to purchase and utilizing MyPap far more than we're seeing households of other races looking to purchase with MyPap. Next slide. So during this period of time, 18 to 22, 5 of the 20 MyPap borrowers were Black households. These households have on average the highest income of about 70,000, just close to 71,000. But although they were the highest earners, Black households were not those that purchased the highest average price home. That was the white or non-Hispanic households who happened to earn about 10% less than the Black households, but purchased homes that were priced about 10% more than those households that were Black or African American. And then we only had one Asian household, so it's in a lot of ways, it's really difficult to account for that in the larger number. But in terms of the Hispanic households, the average income was about 55,000. And one thing that's noted is that for FY18, we saw some of the lowest income earners that this program has seen. We actually saw 2 households that were in the upper 40s and were able to purchase in Arlington. And granted, they purchased units that were below $200,000, and we typically don't even see those types units anymore. But those were households that benefited from this program greatly. and both of those households happen to be Hispanic. Next slide, please. Um, in terms of MyPAP purchasers with children, of the 20 households that received MyPAP for FY 18 to 22, 35% of the households included children. And nearly half of all children belong to Black households, and 39% of children belong to Hispanic households. More than half of children were school age at the time of application. So this further underscores the desire for potential purchasers to be able to purchase units where their families can grow, where their children can have separate bedrooms, perhaps, where they would not have to transition to other schools if they wanted to uh, sell the unit and buy something that were a bit larger. Next slide. So here we've noted that the overall average age of MyPAP borrowers between 18 and 22 was 36. In FY 19, all buyers were above the age of 43, but the average age for the remaining fiscal years was below 40. So of the last 10 MyPAP loans dispersed, those were between FY 20 and FY 22, 7 of the borrowers were one-person households. And of those borrowers, about 5 of them were age 30. And again, this age group represents a growing demographic of MyPAP applicants who want to purchase. In addition, the age of MyPAP borrowers has been relatively evenly split between households in their 20s, 30s, 40s over time, with one borrower being in their 50s and no borrowers being 60 years of age or older. Next slide. So from FY 18 to 22, staff received about 63 MyPAP applications. Again, for the period of time where we were impacted by COVID, we received very few applications. Of the 63 applications, 20 or 31% purchased with MyPAP. This slide reflects the outcome for the remaining 43 applicants. So to obtain better feedback and insight into why applicants did not purchase, staff conducts follow-up inquiries with households who withdraw a complete application or a partial MyPAP application. So of the 43 applicants who did not purchase, 23% cited monthly costs and housing and size for the desired unit type. And this really goes back to the costs associated with condo fees, because those costs are baked into a debt to income ratio. There's no way to get around it. A lender is going to bake that cost into your debt to income ratio. You cannot opt out of it. And as often as we get that question. And so because of that, the monthly cost for the unit type, because so many households would prefer to have a duplex or even a single family home if possible, but certainly a larger condo. So many of them, or 23% of the applicants, we withdrew their applications after getting out there and determining that the unit that they hoped to purchase was not going to be affordable to them based on the debt to income requirements that their first trust lenders would have in place. Oftentimes they would want larger bedrooms as well as additional square footage. And these responders were surprised to learn that the monthly costs associated with the units that they wanted to purchase was exorbitant. And among this segment of responders, the average household size was 2 persons. Um, Next, the MyPAP applicants who had debt to income ratios that would make homeownership unaffordable or marginally affordable accounted for about 21% of responders. Of those responders, the average household size was 3 persons. And again, it has when we're looking at how larger household size, we're looking at possibly 2 adults. So those 2 adults, we're looking at their credit for both adults, um, student loans, and consumer debt, and the like are all just kind of lumped in there. 19% of responders ended up purchasing elsewhere, both within the region and out of state. And 19% of responders were over income or increased income following the application submission. Next slide. So based on the past several years, we have made some observations and just kind of seen what the opportunities are for this program as well as our a few of our other programs. But we do know that MyPAP loans have increased over time. That's primarily due to the housing market. We know that borrowers buy smaller 1 and 2 bedroom condos as opposed to the 3 bedroom units that they would prefer. Um, but because there are limited supply of affordable, larger bedroom housing stock, those households tend to look elsewhere for larger units. We have seen some successes in terms of our affordable dwelling unit programs where we have been able to support those households that want to purchase, perhaps don't want to purchase an older condo, but want to get something that they would probably ordinarily not even be able to afford. And so that's what our affordable dwelling unit program has provided. Additionally, we work with Virginia Housing and are a part of a cohort that offers a Spark program, which is a interest rate reduction program. And with this program, Virginia Housing loans are um, offered to households that meet income criteria, and they can get a 1% interest rate reduction for those loans. In terms of challenges, as always, restrictive lending criteria, especially post-COVID, the lack of desired inventory in the affordable range, debt to income ratios, and then those HOA fees, which are really difficult um, to get around, and because there are not many other housing options that do not have HOA fees associated with them that are affordable. But in terms of opportunities, we do see that there are opportunities to provide additional outreach and education to Black and Hispanic renters, those that perhaps are in that 80% of AMI category that would want to purchase. We're also looking to develop ideas around a renter to homeownership cohort. That could also be a part of those households that are renting at about 80% of AMI, where we could support those households for a period of time through homeownership education, financial counseling, and then have that lead to down payment assistance like our MyPAP program. So we're looking at those ideas, and of course, we welcome additional ideas. Right now, the county is well on our way in doing a homeownership study. Next slide. In our homeownership study, we are looking at at the needs and the preferences of potential buyers in the county. We're also really delving deep into affordability criteria and barriers to purchasing. We want to examine the availability of affordable housing stock and try to figure out ways in which we can support moderate income home buyers and existing homeowners that need those supports in order to purchase or maintain home ownership in the county. We also want to clarify and better define the community's homeownership goals, the vision, and our values. And we want to examine the efficacy of our existing programs and hopefully just draw up some new program goals for the community to support these needs. So with that, I think that's about the end of this presentation, but I'd be happy to answer questions. With regards to the homeownership study, I know Caitlin may have touched on that previously, but we'd be happy to just provide additional information or insights on that.
Great. Thank you so much, Akira.
Sure.
I guess before we move to the room for any questions, I wanted to make sure that we opened it to the couple members who are on the call first to see if they have any questions. And if you do, just raise your hand, use the raise hand feature. All right, well, not seeing anything. Are there any questions in the room, Laura?
Thank you for all that information. Of the expenditures that you referenced, how much of that is new grant money each year versus how much of that is sort of the revolving money from closed loans, the payment and the appreciation?
You want me to take that one, Akira?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, so this is we sort of revised the way that we funded the program a couple years ago. Previously, it was sort of all kept in a revolving loan fund, but because of HUD timeliness requirements and just us being able to spend money per the requirements of HUD, we actually allocate new funding to this program every year now. So the last couple years, it's been about 600,000 each year, and I think that's the projected amount for 2024 as well.
Does the revenue go into that though, or does it go elsewhere?
So the repayments come back to the county as program income, and it's then put back into our unprogrammed funding coffers, if you will, and we can then use it for other programs or potentially reallocate it to MyPAP if we anticipate the program would need it. But a lot of times what does wind up happening is we do often allocate CDBG to multifamily projects, and a lot of times those repayments are then factored into that loan amount.
Do you know of the, I think it was 17 or 19% that purchased elsewhere? Do you know if they had any purchasing support towards those purchases, or if they were able to, based on presumably the lower cost of property, able to buy outright?
Yeah, great question. So the households that ended up purchasing in DC, we do see that those households accessed a grant of about $10,000. Households that purchased in Fairfax and the city of Alexandria did not take advantage of any considerable down payment assistance programs, with the exception of the Federal Home Loan Bank has a grant which is about $8,000, $5,000 to $8,000 for teachers and emergency personnel. We did see a couple households that purchased affordable dwelling units in the city of Alexandria. So those units were already reduced or affordable, if you will. But that's, I think that's about the gist of it.
And I have a second question.
Sure.
Has there been any consideration of increasing the amount, the amount of a particular loan, or utilizing any of our developer funds money to help compensate for the fact that, you know, there are going to be fewer and fewer units available.
Okay, so you're saying increasing the MyPAP loan amount, so as opposed to 25% of the purchase price, possibly 30% of the purchase price? Is that your question? Yeah. So no, I think those are some of the conversations that we'll be having in the next coming months with the homeownership study groups and forums that we'll be having to just determine if that's the direction that people think we need to head in. The MyPAP loan is really one of the highest loans in the country. Like, this is $112,000 to purchase a home, and we don't see that beyond, you know, places like San Francisco. So it's a very large sum of money to be a silent second trust. But if there are opportunities and if there is presented a need for us to increase that, I think, you know, that would be something that we could do. I think it is important to mention that households at 80% of AMI, but there are sometimes where we get the question, well, why can't we increase the purchase price? So the purchase price maximum is 500,000. It's important that households at 80% of AMI really can't afford much more than 300 or so $1,000 because of condo fees. So to increase the purchase price amount itself wouldn't necessarily meet the needs of households at 80% of AMI. In terms of utilizing resources from developers, I know that there are opportunities to do that with our affordable dwelling units, where we can get on-site units, or we can obtain an AHIF contribution. The units that are within our affordable dwelling unit portfolio are priced substantially less than the market rate units in the same development. For example, we just closed the units at 2000 Clarendon, and our units in 2000 Clarendon were priced about 308 to 360, and the 2000 Clarendon project units started at about 690 for a studio unit. And so we do take advantage of those development tools whenever possible. But there's always an opportunity for expanding that, and if we can make that happen, I'm all for it.
One more question. How do people find out about the program? And once they kind of get into the program, do they just like go out and work with a realtor like any of us would? Or how do they kind of locate properties, especially those affordable dwelling unit properties? How do they find out about them?
Sure. Okay, so the county's website has all of the information with regard to the MyPAP program. We also conduct regular marketing efforts where we are at housing forums. We do the Northern Virginia Housing Expo. We have notification lists that are where a household could be added to our notification list, where we publish regular updates on our programs. We have close to 300 people on our notification list. And again, that comes from our website, where people can sign up on our website. So once a household decides that they want to pursue MyPAP, they can contact us, and we can just walk them through the process where they would apply for their first trust. They need to have approval from a first trust lender before they are approved or even considered for MyPAP, because MyPAP is a second trust loan. So we have to ensure that they can get a first trust. So the lenders that we work with are lenders that are listed on the Virginia Housing website, and they are Virginia Housing approved. And again, that's cross-populated on our website. So they can go to any one of those lenders to get approved for a first trust mortgage, and then we move forward through the process. And yes, they would work with a regular traditional realtor to identify a unit once they have been pre-approved for MyPAP, because essentially they are looking for a unit that would meet their income criteria, a unit that they would be able to have a debt to income ratio that meets the criteria for us as well as the criteria for their first trust lender. In terms of our affordable dwelling units, that information is also on our website, but we get those units so infrequently, and those units resell so infrequently. So the last time we had an affordable dwelling unit sell was in 2021, and that was, and the unit that sold prior to that was in 2017. So the turnover for affordable dwelling units is few and far between. But again, that information is found on our website. Whenever we have new units that come online from a developer, we again publish that information online. We publish that information in Earl Now, El Tiempo. We get flyers out to civic associations, to any association that we have on our list, as well as our notification list. And so we really try to blanket the community with that information. And then basically people would come right back to us to gain more information about how to apply for those units.
Can I also just add that the Akiria and her colleague Odalis also work very closely with Karen Surface with Latino Economic Development Corporation, who runs the Achieve Your Dream program, which is also funded through CDBG. And you guys have a really close working relationship where, Karen is doing the homeownership counseling, which is a requirement for the MyPAP program. And she refers a lot of clients to the MyPAP program.
Yeah, thanks for pointing that out, Kate. Yeah, so LEDC is a great partner because they provide the homeownership education, but then also the financial counseling. And then on the other end, they provide counseling for households that may be looking at foreclosure.
Two last questions. So do you happen to know if any of the sort of the typical professions of the buyers? Just curious as to whether they're, county employees, police, fire, teachers, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then my second question is, I'm assuming that there's no tag associated with the loan that says they have to sell to a affordable buyer when they sell the property, when they resell the property. Is that's how it is?
Yeah, got it. So in terms of occupations, we typically see teachers that are single households, single adult individual households, administrative workers, some workers that work for nonprofit entities, definitely county employees. We've had 2 county employees that were able to purchase affordable dwelling units in the past couple years. Those were the new units, one at 2000 Clarendon and another here recently at Axumite Village. And those employees were able to take advantage of the Live Where You Work program that the county offers to employees, which provides a financial forgivable loan on top of MyPAP. And so we're able to kind of cobble together those resources. So yeah, primarily we do see some healthcare, but primarily administrative, education, and nonprofit and county government. And then in terms of affordability restrictions, the MyPAP loan does not have any restrictions associated with it once the loan is repaid. While the loan is still outstanding, the unit can only be occupied by the owner of the property, and they have to be the primary resident. Uh, the unit cannot be resold during that time period, and once it's resold, the loan has to be repaid. They can refinance, and the loan does not have to be repaid when they refinanced. Oftentimes, and what we saw post-COVID is that many of our MyPAP borrowers were able to get substantially lower interest rates, and they did so, but they didn't have enough equity in the home at that time to repay the MyPAP loan, and they didn't have to. So in terms of your question about restrictive covenants, or if they have to resell the unit to another household that meets income criteria, the answer is no. Our affordable dwelling units, however, do have or do carry restrictive covenants, and those are in the deed. And those deeds stipulate that those households have to resell those units to households that meet income criteria. So if they're 80% of AMI units, they have to resell those units to households that are at or below 80% of AMI. And the county helps in ensuring that that happens. We work as a facilitator between the seller and the purchaser, basically by doing marketing, identifying a new purchaser, doing all of the underwriting associated with ensuring that that new purchaser meets the program criteria, and then just kind of helping the transaction to go smoothly.
Great. Well, unless there are any other questions from folks in the room or on the call, I'm not seeing any. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, Akiria. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. And if there are any questions, my information, I think Caitlin can provide that, but it's also on the slide deck, and I'd be happy to answer any further questions that you have.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and I also will just, do a quick shout out that, as Akiria mentioned, we're working on this homeownership study, and if anyone is interested in participating or getting involved, let me know, and we can make sure that you're included on notifications for that process. We're hoping to, really make some meaningful improvements and changes to some of our programs to continue to support moderate income families in the county. All right, so I think, Laura, we can probably move to our next agenda item.
Sounds good. So next, I think, is the FY 2022 Housing Annual Report.
Yeah, and I think we have Joel here who's going to walk us through that.
Hi, good evening. Thanks for having me. Give me 1 minute while I pull up the report. All right, so the Affordable Housing Master Plan Annual Report was released just this past month, and what it does is provides an overview of accomplishments that further the county's affordable housing goals, objectives, and policies over this past fiscal year, and that's from July to June. A companion document is also available on our website that has a complete data set of all the indicators. I believe there's 61 of them that have been developed as part of the the master plan monitoring and reporting plan. And this data goes back to 2010. So I believe Caitlin sent out the link to the report, and I will touch on a few of the highlights tonight. So the annual report consists of a letter from the housing director and Venezia, an overview of both the rental and home ownership market, and really the implementation highlights for each of the 3 master plan goals, which are supply, access, and sustainability. So the letter from the director highlights new or ongoing initiatives, such as the newly initiated homeownership study that Akiria just talked about, so I won't go into details on that. The letter also highlights the continued use of resources to support residents impacted by COVID, including housing, food, and technology assistance. In fiscal year 2022, 1,685 households received emergency rental assistance. So one of the big efforts in fiscal year 2022 was a review of the Affordable Housing Master Plan itself. The final product of this process was an updated implementation framework, which will really guide our work over the next 5 years. So the key recommendations of the implementation framework include exploring additional financing and reducing costs for affordable housing developments. As Akiria mentioned before, evaluating our homeownership programs to better address equity and wealth building goals, increasing the number of subsidized units that are accessible and affordable to households at or below 30% of area median income, address capital needs and increase inspections for existing committed affordable units, and to promote the use of clean energy sources and committed affordable developments. So looking at the first master plan goal of supply, I think it's safe to say the biggest accomplishment of the year is the acquisition of Barcroft Apartments. This past December, Arlington County and Amazon worked with Jar Lynch Real Estate Partners to preserve more than 1,300 market rate affordable apartment homes at Barcroft Apartments community located along Columbia Pike. This is one of the single largest preservation efforts ever in the region. And the acquisition met many of the goals and objectives of the Affordable Housing Master Plan. The financing package, including restrictive covenants that require Jar Lynch to maintain the 1,300 units at up to 60% of the area median income for 99 years. Additionally, as part of the long-term plans, Jar Lynch is now undertaking a master planning process with significant input from existing residents to reimagine the Barcroft community to include a mix of renovated units and new development. Additionally, the county board approved just over $21 million in financing through the local Affordable Housing Investment Fund for the first phase of redevelopment at APA's Marbella Apartments. This will include 234 units, a net increase of over 200 affordable units from the existing apartments. These units are walking distance to both the courthouse and Roslyn metro stations and will be committed for 75 years and will serve a mix of households earning between 30 to 60% of area median income. For home ownership, again, Akiria mentioned this briefly, but 2,000 Clarendon condominiums were completed, and this is located in the courthouse neighborhood and contains 90 condominiums, 4 of which are committed affordable homeownership units. The 4 affordable units are 2 one-bedrooms and 2 two-bedrooms, and were sold via random selection drawing to eligible households at or below 80% of area median income. All 4 purchases were Arlington County residents, including 1 Arlington County employee. For Goal 2 access, the county continued to invest in eviction prevention in order for households to remain housed. The eviction prevention program provides same-day or emergency rent, utility, and transportation assistance. So from 2020 to 2022, the county, along with Arlington Thrived, helped 4,800 households stay in their homes. Additionally, as households continue to suffer the impacts of COVID-19, the county committed its support by continuing to provide benefits towards working families, disabled individuals, and households with behavioral health care, as well as seniors. So the Arlington County, through its locally funded housing grant program, was able to sustain benefits for these affected households through fiscal year 22 by supporting just shy of 1,500 households, an increase of 117 households compared to 2021. Also in fiscal year 2022, for 7 first-time home buyers received down payment assistance through the MyPAP program. Again, these were, as Akiri mentioned, one was an Arlington government employee, another was a single family of 2, and another one was a single mother of 2. And finally, for goal 3, sustainability, the biggest effort that was in 2022 was that the county published its long-term strategies for improving oversight and tenant support at aging CAF properties. This includes 17 strategies spanning 5 work areas to really strengthen the county's oversight and tenant supports, and it's over 11,000 plus committed affordable units. So significant progress has already been made in many of the strategies, including expanded inspection of properties, coordination between departments on tenant and housing issues, and communication to CAF households to learn about residents' experiences. So thank you. That concludes my presentation on the highlights of the 2022 Affordable Housing Master Plan Annual Report.
Thanks, Joel. Does anyone have any questions in the room about the report? Not hearing anything. Lot happened in 2022 for sure. All right. Well, if we're not hearing any questions, I think Joel, thank you so much for joining us. But I did send the link to everyone in the room so people can kind of take a deeper look at what's in there. And we'll keep on keeping on with further progress in 2023.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks, Joel. All right.
We move right along to our last.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
About 20 minutes. We'll see what we can accomplish. So we wanted to just debrief about the whole NOFA process, the application review, the ranking, the scoring, all of that. So we will take Anna around the results of the review. So I think as Caitlin said in her email, we'll kind of break this out into 3 different categories so we can kind of wrap our heads around the different aspects of the process, and we'd like to just kind of open it up. I think personally it would be really interesting to hear from the folks who have done this for the first time and get their feedback before we dive in and before those of us who have been doing this for a while kind of influence your responses. I'd love to hear what you guys thought in general, and then of course we want to hear from you on the different categories as well, but kind of what was the process like for you, and what do you feel like worked? What's your feedback?
Like overall process from start to finish?
Any particular feedback you have about maybe how it worked wasn't what you were expecting it to be, or there were particular feedback ideas for how we could tweak the process moving forward. So I think the new folks would be Jennifer and Margaret and Nick. I don't know if this was your first time around.
Yeah, it was.
Yep. So any initial thoughts before we dive in? That's putting you on the spot. Like, you don't.
I'll go first. So 2 things. One is that I really liked the presentation opportunity. That's in all the different grant review processes I've been involved in, that is generally not the case. And so I thought that although time consuming, was valuable because it both from a being able to ask questions and also get a little bit more flavor of things. It was also very useful to get the feedback from others that had been around in the process for longer, as well as I liked the staff review piece too, or staff MC review piece, because that also made me look at it from a different angle or whatever. The other, so I thought that was great. The other just observation is that in all of my grant review experience, I have never seen the entire group review and score all of the applications. So that was a little fascinating to me because I'd never seen quite that intense an effort. And usually you see like groups of cohorts of like 3 or 4 review 10 applications, and then certainly have presentations or talk about all the applications, but that you aren't having every single person on the group read all 40 some odd applications. So that was just another observation.
I would say that I think the actual information that they have to fill out was a lot. I think some of the questions seem repetitive or very similar and not in the correct order. So you're asking like what someone wants, and then you're telling about who they are at the end. Like, why wouldn't you? I just felt like some of the questions just weren't. If I were having to fill that out, I can see why some people phoned it in a little bit and then like really dialed in for the presentation, which obviously doesn't necessarily help them if they do not a great job with the presentation. So I would say that is one of the things I thought about, especially for some of these organizations that are really small and like 1 or 2 or 3 people, like that's a lot of time to put into something. So I would say that. I really enjoyed the presentations as well. I thought that was great and made the light bulb click for me on a lot of these things, especially people who were a little bit confusing or didn't put a lot of information in their application. So then it was kind of like, okay, well, I'm looking at this application, but I know the real scoring is going to probably come from me anyway, like after I actually see them and get to talk to them and all of that good stuff. So I placed much more of an emphasis myself on the presentations. Yeah, and I think, I'm not sure what instructions they get, but some of the newer people I know obviously struggled with even sort of like answering the questions. So I don't really know what the process is for like getting the applications out there and like the information that people get to fill that out. So I think there was also sometimes like a disconnect in what people were actually giving us versus what we asked for. For example, we always ask the question, like, how are you making sustainable? And then we completely ignore it throughout the process about how they're making sustainable and say, well, they need it. So then, like, why ask the question? They're not going to answer it, and we're not going to pay attention to it. That's it.
I think for me, if I were to go back, I'd probably wait to score them until after the presentation, because like for some reason I thought we would score them before they presented. So I was going 8, like for like each day that, or like for each night that they presented, I would go through 8 of them, eight or 9 of them in a row, and my brain would be fried at the end, and they would all blend together. So I think waiting until after they presented and after I have, all the information from staff also was great to have. So I think it's probably something I learned from that, but also, I don't know. I think we talked about this before. I think it would be helpful to have them in person to do the presentation. I think having them online and having us in person thing doesn't work personally. I'm not a fan of it. But also, I guess when I I guess like being here for 3.5 hours straight too was like, I was very surprised at how intense those conversations were. It was great to be here for that long and talk with everyone, but at the same time, it's like, it's not what you expect, which is nice. So, other than that, I think I enjoyed it. I think I really liked what we did in December. I think that is a great tool to use to kind of score it, and it made this so much easier to know or like understand. Yeah, but other than that, I enjoyed it.
Thank you for that, for just kind of giving a new perspective. Nobody else did this for the first time, is that right? Everyone else did that in? So why don't we kind of break it up a little bit, and you guys hit on most categories already, but we'll give other folks a chance to talk to. In terms of the organization of the NOFA, and as a result, the organization of the applications, you know, Jennifer, you had some thoughts on that, and I know in recent years we've got a couple of kind of tweaks to that, which I think has streamlined it a little bit, but what are folks' thoughts on how that went this year?
I think here's the other thing I forgot to add to. I think for me, I felt a little uncomfortable trying to judge people's like their CV. Like I'm not one to, I don't want to grade someone on like their background experience. I felt very uncomfortable doing that. So like on that portion, I think, you know, while that's great and all, I think that should be optional possibly, like to get their CV of like what their background is, because not everyone is as experienced as the other person would be. I think it kind of skews our perception of they'll do better because they have more experience, but that might not be the case. Just what I thought.
Combination of NOFA and the worksheet. We've gotten much better at aligning the two of them, the NOFA and the worksheet, but it's still not quite there. So as I was scoring some, I had to go to a couple of different places a couple of times. And it seems not just for administrative efficiency, but for fairness to the applicant, that if we're going to score 1, 2, 3, that maybe the NOFA could be set up exactly 1, 2, 3. And then it's easier then to actually look at that section and say, okay, I am scoring on this. And if it doesn't have sustainable, I'm going to give them a really low score on sustainable. But so we've gotten much better, but it's not quite exactly lined up. I don't know which one you changed to go further worksheet.
Right. We're not forgetting about you, Mike, so feel free to jump in as well. Anything else on how things were organized, the criteria, the structure?
Maybe we could just be clearer when we're talking about sustainability. At least I think we're talking about how is this program going to go forward after us. And so many of them answered their structure and their long-range planning and organizationally how they would be sustainable, not financially. And maybe we just need to be a little clearer on that if that's in fact what we want.
Yeah, now that I'm thinking about it, Caitlin, you'll have to know it better, but now that I'm thinking about it, I think the words long-term goals and sustainability are kind of all part of a single criteria. I may be misremembering that, but I think that might be what's tripping people up. Like there's long-term goals, but then what we want to hear, I think, is about sustainability and how they're going to manage.
It says how will the project eventually become self-sufficient under that part.
Under the long-term goals.
Yeah.
So
and it may be to separate that out, and it may be to just be much more direct, which is say, how would you fund this program if the grant weren't there, or when you no longer have the grant, or whatever. Just be upfront and direct about it.
Yeah, this is one of those questions that we've tweaked several times over the last however many years, and yeah, we never get it quite right. So we'll try to to go back and look at that one again for next year to try to make it a little bit more clear. We do emphasize it in the NOFA workshop that we do as something to really pay attention to and try to make sure that people understand what we're trying to what we're getting at. But yeah, it's definitely.
It also may be purposeful that they're not.
Yeah, I think that there's that
too.
too.
Not have an answer.
Right.
So
I think there's a little bit of that
some of
too.
it may be that they're hiding behind confusion.
Right.
Can you blatantly say funding cannot be indefinite? And when we can no longer fund you, what are you going to do?
Oh, I guess we could. I mean, we could talk about that. I mean, we haven't said that because I don't think that that's we've never explicitly said we're not going to fund an organization forever. But maybe we consider reframing to be a little bit more, try to get to what you're saying there. We'll tweak it again.
Anything else about organization, and that kind of flows right into the next category, which is about sort of evaluation and scoring and the categories and the groupings. That goes into kind of how we group things and discuss programs in kind of groups, which I think we changed up a little bit this year in terms of not making the groupings quite so narrow and broadening those out a little bit. Also, I think another thing to think about is the weighting of the criteria. How many points are allotted to each criteria? I know many of them are 10, some of them are 5. Does that seem to be working?
I just say for scoring, I did try initially to wait till the end to score, and my brain was a mush of all of them. So I do it each night now. So I read the stuff in advance, write notes, and right after the presentation, sometimes between presentations, I'm actually then just jotting down my numbers before I forget.
And I know we've talked a lot in recent years about how kind of, I think where we landed has been, as long as you're being consistent within your own scoring, that it kind of all works out. We've talked a lot about like, what does it mean to be a 3 versus a 5 versus a 9, but I think if you guys are all feeling comfortable with being consistent among yourself, then I think it seems to be working.
I will say to that degree that I did feel like a little lost in some of the larger point areas. I was like, I'm gonna throw a dart at the wall because I'm really not quite sure. So I don't know quite how you solve that problem, but I did feel a little, having not been through it at all before, now that I have seen a round of scoring, I'm in much better shape for the next go around. But for a first strike at it, I did feel a little lost as to, I don't know what a 7 is. Like, is it a 7? Is it a 5? Is it a 8?
I also think part of it's like you're taking their data, like they're naming all these stats and things, and you're just like, I don't know, like, right? Like, I don't know where you're getting these from. I'm sure they're right, but it's like, HUD this, HC that, 75%. I'm like, okay, so I guess it's really a big problem. Like, I don't know in the context of the actual issue until we sort of like have the information from the SMEs and subject matter experts and like talk to them. And you're like, oh, okay, like, this is the problem that like many of you are trying to solve at the same time, and you're just like have different pieces of it. Like, it came together more holistically when they were talking during the presentations.
I think the other thing that kind of popped out to me during the process as well was a lot of them asked for funding for personnel positions, which again would have been nice. Like when I was going through, I didn't think to like look at loads going towards personnel because it's not going to the actual issue at hand, which is a lot of what they're dealing with right now. A lot of these organizations, they don't have the funding to properly pay staff which is a much bigger problem than what I think we could even impact, you know. And I don't think we are, allowed to pay or to contribute money to them for personnel, is that correct?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, no, we
You
can.
don't-
Yeah.
We are allowed?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Most of our programs are funding a staff person.
Because most of them are services.
Okay.
Yeah.
And people need to be delivering those services, so
Yeah.
the salaries,
It's been a long day, sorry.
yeah, for the most part, the salaries that are being paid for by these nonprofits through these grants are to perform a function for the clients.
Yeah, okay.
So,
That makes sense.
yeah.
Could I just mention to your point, because I struggled with that, because I couldn't hit it on a number. So what I do now, that works, I start with, I just assume a 6. And if it's okay, I read it, okay, 6. And I think, that's pretty good. If it's an 8, yeah, I think it's lacking, it gets a 4. If it is in the toilet, it gets a 2. And just a handful, very few handful get a 10.
Yeah.
But I assume a 6, and it's up a little or down a little, because otherwise, I don't
Yeah,
think that's too
where
much
do you
to
assume a
start.
5?
Okay.
So that's why I was like, is a C a 6?
But as
or
I said, as long as you're
7, you
consistent,
know?
as long as you're consistent, then
I
it
know.
works out.
But
That
then,
was very disconcerting to me.
and I struggle with that a lot because like if you looked at my scores, they'd all be closer to the higher end of the scale, right? Like, I don't tend not to give 1s and 2s, but I try as hard as I can. I don't always succeed to use the whole range of, because, that's what we're trying to do, is differentiate between these programs, and they're not gonna know that they got a 40 and another program got a 80. Like, that's what we're actually trying to get to. But admittedly, I still, my default is probably a 6 or a 7, and then kind of going from there as opposed to a 5.
Yeah.
But I would imagine it's probably more ideal and would get us a wider range and sort of differentiate better if our default was a 5, because then we can see more of the differences.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I kind of treat it, instead of like, is 0 through 10, I do 5 through 10. I don't give anyone below 5. That way.
It's even harder ask.
Me too.
Yeah.
Well, they won't see it, so.
Yeah, and I'm like, I think for me it makes it easier because I could sit there all night thinking, oh, it's 4 or 5, no, 5. Just makes my life easier, I think, to like score it that way and think of it, because that way I don't want to, because I think my scores, I think they range, the lowest I gave out was like a 48 out of 100. That was like the lowest. So, I don't know.
I did like the larger groupings, and I particularly appreciated getting the groupings before dot night. So I could think about those groupings beforehand rather than doing it at that moment, seeing what the groupings were. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'm saying it to the wrong person.
So just in, to be conscious of time, the last 2 categories of presentations, we talked about that a little bit, and the ranking and voting, the dot night, electronic version of that. Any additional thoughts on presentation format, structure? I guess we did all virtual for the presentations. They were set up as about, I think it was 10 minutes of presentation, or leaving 5 minutes at least for Q&A. That worked for folks.
Oh, that was very good. I personally liked the virtual presentations just because it was
Me too.
much easier to control. And I mean, it's wonderful when Bugatti brings in 10 of their alums and they all fill the room, but at the same time, it's chaotic, and it's not necessarily fair to everybody else who may not have their clients that they can bring in. So some folks game the in-person a little more, and I think that having the virtual makes it much more level, much more fair, because you can also stop people. We've had some folks that just continue on and on and on, even after the dings. Anyway.
Yeah.
I would agree.
Yeah.
I would too.
I think, like I know I said earlier, like I prefer in person. I think I'm good with online presentations, but I think it's, for me, I like being, I think it should, I think all of us should either all be online or all be in person. I think the hybrid, I think I should feel more comfortable because I feel like I can't give my full attention to someone when I'm trying to bend over to look at the camera and then try to make sure that they're hearing what I'm saying. And I know on my laptop, I can talk into it or put my hand up in Teams and, ask a question that they can hear.
I guess we're kind of beholden to the new,
Yeah,
we'll call them
county
new rules.
County rules are,
Turning back to
I'm picky, I'm sorry.
the rules of, meeting in person.
I mean, the 2 years that we did it virtually, completely virtually, I thought were the best years we had.
So.
Yeah, and
sorry.
I was just going to say that, and I appreciate all the comments about the presentations being in person, virtual, hybrid. Unfortunately, there's just not a perfect solution, but I will just add that one of the reasons that we decided to do virtual attendees this year was because of the room capacity issues. Like the room you're sitting in now was the biggest room we had available online in October, but it was often unavailable. And even when we've been in this room in the past for proposal review, we barely fit with applicants in the room. So now that room 311, once the technical issues get resolved, is back to being available, maybe we consider trying an in-person session next year. But I do agree with Tim. It does get pretty chaotic when we've got like people coming in and out. So anyway, just thought I'd add that.
Do we know what the applicants think of the online?
I actually think they liked it because they don't have to come down to the county offices.
You're talking about equity and like being able for these groups, like having it not have to travel.
Yeah, I thought they would prefer it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think most people did.
Car talking.
Yeah, the guy was in the car.
He was driving and giving us a presentation.
Yeah.
One of the only other observations that I had is looking in terms of, I guess this is about grouping or scoring, I don't know what it's about, but I'm noticing that the new programs, which are the ones that are grayed out in terms of the FY23 funding, I believe, is that right? Are the ones that are scoring lower on within their category in general. Like it looks like a few of the public service ones will get funded, but in general, the newer programs are scoring mostly the lowest. And so I don't know if that's just a function of what those programs were, or if there's some support that they need.
Well, that's a question I have for staff as to whether the new folks, particularly if they didn't get funded, get a debrief of any kind or something like that where, they can learn from the experience and improve their proposal more.
Yeah, so yes, so we've offered it in the past, and in the past it's been more of like a, hey, we're happy to do this, and some take us up on it, others do not. This year we decided we're gonna, after this current review cycle, I'm gonna reach out to applicants directly, and just try to have a quick conversation with them, because I do want to have the opportunity to kind of discuss what's going on. Obviously people don't have to take us up on that, but or put much thought into it, but I think that most applicants, when they have requested a meeting in the past, they we're appreciative of the feedback, and having the opportunity to talk to you guys after each session and during the ranking our ranking night, it's really helpful for us to be able to relay some of the feedback that you all had. So
do they ever FOIA successful applications from the prior year?
I don't think since I've been here that's happened. Rhoda, have you had that happen before. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Just because I'm suspicious, as soon as the process is over, I shred everything that I had. I really don't have anything from this last review process.
Okay.
Well, just an observation on yours, the 8 that are new projects that are in the lowest rank, 3 of them are long-time applicants. Thrive, APA, and B2I. So it's not just new people. So what that tells me is that, and they know how to do these programs, they know how to do these applications. It tells me that they were just not programs that were not appreciated by the committee. If it were all new people,
Yeah.
that would maybe,
AHC is in there too.
but the fact that you got Bridges and you got APA and Thrive, it's a little surprising to see them that low. But they did get 8 votes, it looks like.
Well, I also think the other thing with that too, you have how many, what is it, 12 groups there? Like, that's the other thing, like, it's hard to, like, every one of those got a vote. So that's the other aspect of it, 8 might have been bad for them per se, but like their application might have been all right. It just might not have been as good as the other ones that we saw, which is the hard choice.
Yeah, and now that I'm seeing this is sorted by score, and like, for example, Arlington Thrive, the vote count would push it up a little bit higher than some of these other ones.
The thing that's always interesting to look at on this, and I can't recall if we did this on dot night, but the disparities between staff and the committee. Did we look at the?
Yeah,
we mentioned that
Oh, we
sometimes.
didn't talk about that? Okay.
Yeah.
I really forgotten that.
Yeah.
Anyway,
We
that's
did.
something that's always interesting.
Yeah. Particularly for
They
BC,
didn't show
that was
up
brought
for
up.
Oh yeah, Bowers.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a big 10 points is a big one.
Yeah.
Again, I think.
I was actually surprised at how close they were in most cases, recognizing that I think, which also made me concerned about mine, whether I was a 5 or a 6 or 7, was that the staff was always lower in most cases. So I guess we're not too.
Yeah, I think that like the Bowers one, it's a function of us wanting to, we want to give as many points as we can generally, but, even then. Anything else we didn't talk about that you're dying to bring up that, like, didn't go well, was different this time around? Alright. Good feedback. I think that was really productive. I hope that's helpful for you guys.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, we'll take this feedback and try to incorporate some of it into, when we start working on the next year's NOFA. We usually review that with the committee either in May or June, so you should see a copy of it in the next few months. And then in terms of next steps for the FY 2024 programs or applications, we are in the process of developing the budget recommendation. And again, that's usually released along with the county manager's budget in February. So we will obviously share that with everyone once it's available. And then once it comes out, then the county board typically approves the budget in April, and then funds will be available starting in July. So still got a little bit of ways to go, but thank you guys again for your, you're reviewing all the applications, really committing your time to helping us review these proposals. I think, it's a long slog, October and beginning of November, so we really do appreciate everyone's sharing their time with us. So.
I had one last question. I noticed
Sure.
that Friends of Guest House has an award that's higher than their request. And I just wondered.
Oh, no, that was
Last year.
that was last year's.
Oh, that was last year's.
Yeah, so the the 2023 and the source
Last.
columns, those are the current year funding, not the
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
So. All right, so do we want to move on to the staff report?
Yes, sure. Just wanted to give a quick staff report, and that's this document here. As you know, one of our funding sources is the Community Action, CSBG, Community Services Block Grant Program. And so the programs that we fund with that source of funding, they're required to do their demographics. Their demographic information is very detailed. So at the end of the fourth quarter report, which we provide to the state for that funding, the state compiles the information and they generate this dashboard report. So as you can see, we've got some key demographics information here in terms of programs and the number and people who were supported by this funding. You know, we have, you know, age, gender, and race indicating the distribution and among various programs, the household income and housing status, all of those indicators. So all of those pieces of data we actually collect from the different programs and organizations provide that information to us. So this is the synopsis right here. At the back of the report is the fiscal information in terms of the funding that we got and how we utilize that funding. And we have the categories by which the programs were funded and sorted. And so it just provides a really good caption, summary of that particular funding source and people who were served. So we served, there were some total figures in terms of individuals and families. Yes, individuals served were 1,009, and the number of families served 856. And and our partnerships is just the number of organizations that that are included or that receive funding. So it's just a handy way of summarizing that information.
Great, thanks so much, Rolda. I don't actually have anything else to report. I think I just provided the update on the budget and you know, plans for next year. So that's really all the information that I have to share. So I think we can move on to the either the chair report or member reports, Laura.
Nothing for me. Anything from anybody else? Member reports? All right. And I think that's all we've got for tonight. Thanks for your spending a couple extra minutes and participating in the discussion.
Yes, thank you so much. And sorry again for the technical difficulties earlier, but we appreciate you being patient with us. We will see you in February.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
You.
Night.
Feeling.